Today's lesson, Solutions More or Less, is located on page M433 of your workbook. For the warm-up, I'd like you to go ahead and solve this equation. I'll give you a moment, pause the video, and then we'll talk about this problem. Okay, the way that you've solved problems like this in the past are using inverse operations. So we're going to do everything on the right and the left of the equation the same to keep it in balance. So the first thing we would do using reverse PEMDAS, since we are undoing all of our operations, would be to add 2 to both sides. And then I rebalance my equation and get 3x equals 12. Last thing, to undo that 3 times x, I need to divide by 3. 3's cancel, and I end up with x equals 4. So I'm confident that everyone was able to get to this. One way that you could solve this, though, that's different than probably anything you've done, is you can do this graphically. I don't know if you knew that you could do this. One way is to actually graph it by setting the left side of the equation, 3x minus 2, as an equation. So we'll just make it y equals 3x minus 2. And the right side of the equation was 10. So we'll just make it y equals 10. And if I graph both of these, they're both lines. And where 3x minus 2 equals y equals 10, the only place on this graph where they're equal is where x equals 4. So that's another way of actually solving a simple equation like this, which isn't particularly useful on a simple equation, but when you get to something more complicated, it's a little more useful. So if I graph these two, once again, x equals 4 is the location of their intersection. That's the same as my solution if I do it algebraically. All right, today our goals are to identify the zeros of a quadratic, also known often as the roots or the x-intercepts. We've talked a lot about that recently. We're going to get a little more specific. Specifically, we'll be dealing with a lot of the algebra today. We're going to identify a double root, talk about what that means in terms of a graph. And we're going to write solutions of quadratics at specific output values. We'll use the axis of symmetry in this discussion. Okay, some key terms for today. Principal square root. You know what a square root is. I'm going to introduce the idea of a principal square root. We know what roots are. Double roots will be a new concept. And then we're going to finish up with a very important property that we'll use going forward called the zero product property.